are listening to Regeneration Rising, a podcast from Quivira Coalition's new agrarian program that provides information and inspiration to agrarians beginning their journey in regenerative agriculture. Each episode will explore what it means to work in regenerative agriculture, how people come to choose this as their livelihood, and why it's important to them and our future. We hope this podcast provides a foundation of knowledge for future agrarians and land stewards so they can rise up and focus on a regenerative approach to community, relationships, and the land.
Hello and welcome back to the Regeneration Rising podcast. I'm Taylor Mulia, and today my guest is Fiona Jackson. She is the ranch manager at Redwing Ranch in Gardner, Colorado. And the reason that I invited Fiona to be on the podcast today is because she is not only a beginning rancher herself, but she is also a newly welcomed mentor in the new agrarian program and is just so much fun. This girl is a riot. Every time we get together, I am on the floor laughing. My cheeks hurt. I'm like, face is red. She is so much fun, but also brings such a depth of expertise and real strong passion to ranching. I just love every conversation we had, so I thought I would share that joy with you as well. And before we get into the interview, I'd just like to share a little bit about another podcast we think you'll like. So for the first time in history, our species has the capacity to fundamentally alter the Earth's natural systems. Avoiding this fate requires a radical change in our relationship to nature and how we view it. Nature's Genius is a new podcast series from the Bioneers that explores how the intelligence inherent in nature can help us model human organizations on living systems. You'll hear how urban forests can help us address the climate crisis and how we can repair our relationship with water, and with a keystone species essential to restoration, the beaver. You can listen to Nature's Genius wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Bioneers or find it online at bioneers.org. Okay, on to today's interview. I hope you enjoy. Fiona, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's so nice to have you here today.
Thanks, Taylor. I'm excited to be here.
We've known each other for a couple of years now, and I think your story is so interesting. So let's go a little ways back from your background and your beginning. Tell me about it, what it was like growing up in Redwood City, California.
Yeah, well, I would say I do not have the most traditional path to agriculture. I grew up in the Bay, and both my parents are jewelers, which is probably the farthest thing from ranching possible, but they always instilled in me the importance of eating good food and being outside, and I spent a lot of time outside when we were younger, my sister and I, and on the beach with my younger sisters and whatnot. But really, I would say my start to ag kind of was when I went to Cal Poly. And the funny thing about that was the only reason I went into ag business is because I had a friend tell me that it was the easiest major to get accepted into. Yeah.
That's crazy because, you must have had some interest in it, but really, was it nothing? You were just willing to do a major that you had no interest in?
I remember sitting in my living room with my mom. It was like a CSU, so a state school, so there's no interview questions. It's just like checking boxes, put in your grades, put in your ACT score.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's basically just a business degree, and you had to declare to get accepted into the university, which is a little bit uncommon compared to others where you do your GEs the first couple of years and then decide. And I was like, gosh, I'd just love to go to Cal Poly. And I think financially the price point was right. It was close, but not close enough where I'm going to see my folks every weekend or whatnot. Yeah, honestly, that was it.
Well, you fell in love with it pretty quickly because it sounds like you worked on the organic farm there and did the sustainable ag minor. And yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
My first quarter at Cal Poly, my schedule was kind of set for me when I came into the university. But that second quarter, I was able to pick my classes, and I had quite a bit of AP credit coming into the school compared to some of the other freshmen. And so I was able to get a pretty good schedule, but I also wanted to do, the motto of Cal Poly is learn by doing. So I wanted to kind of get into that. And so I did a organic crop production enterprise course where you worked on the organic farm and you worked at some of the markets and you had to do time on the farm. But then we also got to do a ton of hands-on. And anyways, I absolutely loved that course. And it wasn't, it was it wasn't what I was learning in my ag business courses, which is basically a business degree focusing on the ag industry. So like food and fiber marketing, but really it's a marketing course. So it's business heavy. And so I had a professor Ostroff say, well, we've got the sustainable ag minor where you can take more of these courses. And sure enough, I signed up for that minor and was able to take like a holistic management course where we read Alan Savory's book, and we were able to go out and visit local like tally farms and vineyards and orchards and do a lot of hands-on stuff that wasn't quite even the traditional ag side of Cal Poly either.
Yeah, that's so cool. I can't believe that you read an Alan Savory in college. Like, that's so not my experience.
I hated it.
You did. It's really dry when you don't really understand it. Yeah, yeah.
I honestly don't think I had the context for it then to like really put it to use. And so it was just like, another big book I need to read for another one of my courses, honestly. Yeah. But I remember doing like a grazing plan on paper and everyone like bringing them in and all that stuff. But it was like, I hadn't really done the work to know what that really meant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was cool that they were doing it, but I totally understand that. It's like, yeah, it's not really fun until you've done the actual rotations for a year and you're like, oh my gosh, I know this about that and I can tweak this and that. And yeah, just doing it on paper plus like the fundamentals of holistic management is like so heady that you're like 20 and it's just not.
I just didn't have the context for it to like really know it, just the whole like water holding capacity and all this stuff. It was like I hadn't really worked anywhere other than like on the organic farm at that point to know like, oh gosh, I've seen that in practice. What does that look like?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so then after that, you went and worked on a couple different farms in California, and then took a huge pivot out to Colorado to work at Flying Diamond. So, yeah, tell us about why. Why did you want to go into ranching?
So, when I graduated, I absolutely loved all the hands-on, and I did an internship at Swan Pacific Ranch, which is kind of affiliated with Cal Poly on the coast. And loved that. And anyway, so I kind of wanted to stay with the hands-on manual labor trajectory. And I graduated early just for financial reasons and whatnot. And so I was like, I'll go and do this internship. So I applied for this internship up in Northern California, and it mostly was vegetable farm production, but there was a small animal aspect to it. And I just fell in love with how physical it was, and you're like outdoors and you're moving your body, but I felt like it was a bit more dynamic than pulling weeds or harvesting this or driving a tractor and seeding that. And so I did a couple animal blocks, like 1 month stints where I just worked with the animals on the farm. And I totally loved that. And it's funny, we had like, I don't know, maybe like 2,000 laying hens, and I was deadly afraid of them and like could never collect the eggs. I always made our animal manager Antonio do it because I was so scared of them. But I'd carry these like massive 40-gallon buckets, or sorry, not 40-gallon, 5-gallon buckets that felt like they weighed 40 pounds full of wet, saturated food, because I was just like, I don't like chickens, but I didn't have a problem with the cows or the sheep or the goats or anything. Yeah. And anyways, I found a posting online of a direct-to-consumer beef program through Five Marys up in Northern California. She had featured some of the ranchers and farmers that had been to her course, and one of them was Flying Diamond. And sure enough, I got on social media and found their website, and the posting was just, call Charlie, on the job opportunities page. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll call Charlie. And I didn't know what the job was. I didn't know the timing of the job, the pay of the job, the location of the ranch or anything. But I was like, I don't have anything to lose. What the hell? I'll call him. So I
Yeah.
called him up one day and I was like, well, hey, are you Charlie? He's like, yeah, who are you? I'm like, well, I'm Fiona. I saw this job posting and it turns out they were looking for someone to kind of start right before calving in the calve in May. And I was like, okay, well, that might work because I've committed through the end of March. So I could come out like April 1st. And the original kind of deal was come out through October, November when they preg check and then send their cows to corn stalks. And I, at the time, had another job offer for a farm on the coast, kind of in the Santa Cruz area, at an operation that I was like, oh my gosh, I just love the people there and I know some of them. And I kind of was like, gosh, I feel like that's like the safe option. If I move out to Colorado, it's 8 months. If I hate it, like I'm going to get great job experience. I'm going to work with like livestock as in cattle at scale. And like, it's just 8 months. It's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so sure enough, I drove out in my little Tacoma pickup at the end of March 2020, and then I stayed 3 years.
March
Yeah.
2020. That's crazy. Wow. Well, it was probably a pretty good place to be during the pandemic. You couldn't have chosen a more spacious place to be.
Talk about a job where I was probably like the least affected person in the entire United States. I was like working by myself, potentially my boss. So
Yeah.
like me interacting with one other person, a very small community with like less than 200 people, and mostly a lot of work with livestock by myself, fencing and all the things. So yeah, I was like, it was a non-issue for me. It was great.
Yep. Pretty ideal. Well, yeah. So tell me a little bit about Kit Carson. Yeah. Tiny town, Eastern Colorado. Folks have probably not even driven through it. I don't know. I think maybe if you're going down to Kansas or Texas or something, tell us a little bit about the town and like, how did you, first of all, adore Kit Carson. I think it's awesome. It's a huge difference, though, between where you came from. So tell us about how you jumped in. Like, how did you meet people in the community? How did you cope with such a drastic change in the size of the town you were in?
Well, yeah, I think the community was probably my favorite thing about ranching in Eastern Colorado, to be honest. And it was a big part of why it was easy to stay for those 3 years out there. The town has like one main street, which has like the bank, the post office, had a liquor store, and then the liquor store closed, an antique shop or two, and then like the senior center. And that's about it. So it's pretty bare bones for a main street. But that first year I lived in town and my boss lived 7 miles out of town on the ranch. And so I started making friends the first day I was in Kit Carson. I remember taking my mom to the airport on Sunday afternoon in Denver, and then I was like going to come home and have my nice dinner and get to bed early for my first day of work that Monday. And I feel like I'm going to share a little story, but this story is like the epitome of maybe my personality and maybe Kit Carson. Yeah. I'm like eating dinner, maybe at 7 o'clock or so, and I get like a little knock on my door, and I'm like, oh, that's funny. I don't know anyone, but sure enough, I go and open the door, and there's a guy at the porch, and he's like, hi, my name's Troy. I'm your neighbor. Like, you want to get in and I'll give you a tour at Kit Carson. And I was like, sure. And in retrospect, I never met him. I didn't actually know he was my neighbor, but I happily went and popped my shoes on. I'm like, give me a sec. I grab my shoes and
yeah. So you don't listen to true crime podcasts, I'm gathering.
No, yeah, I don't.
This is like red flag.
Flag. Glaring red flag. And then I get in the pickup. He like cracks a Bud Light for me. I'm like, okay. And then he's like, oh, and this is my brother-in-law in the back seat. I'm like, oh, hi. And then that was the moment though where I was like, oh, I don't actually know these people. I really do hope he's my neighbor. Mm-hmm. And they thought it would be funny to take me to the cemetery as the first stop on the tour of Kit Carson. I absolutely was like, oh, well, I might just get murdered here and not show up for my first day of work. We'll see what happens. Turned out they were great guys, and I don't talk to them regularly, but the 3 years I was out in Kit Carson, we were good friends and they're good folks. But it was just kind of the epitome of small town, of like, there's a new person in town. And so I feel like that is a great example of how you just kind of have to jump in feet first with all these things. I had never ridden a horse before I got to Kit Carson. I kind of lived rurally in Northern California on the farm I was at, but not as remote as Kit Carson. And so I totally just leaned into the people, I would say, more than anything. I became an EMT out there, not because I have a burning passion for emergency medicine, but it was like, hey, this is a way I can get involved in my community, help people. It was like trauma stuff versus medicals type stuff, like car accidents and semis blowing over. And so it was like, I can meet people and I can help people on that volunteer department, which was great. I did things, again, I'm no actress and definitely have no acting career ahead of me, but like joined the melodrama.
Yep.
And so that was like the Kit Carson Day was a day to raise funds for the community every year. And so we do this play and then perform it. So I joined the melodrama, and then somehow my second year of melodrama, I got roped into being like the lead female position or actress. That was great. And I think just more than anything, like making the time for those people out there, and it was like amazing the amount of help and welcome kind of ness that I felt from everyone.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, like if you can do it in a town of 200, then it's definitely we've got a lot of apprentices going out to really small towns, and I think sometimes actually I've heard that people can feel more at home and more social in a town like that than they can feel in downtown Denver, almost, because it's lonelier being around all of these people when you don't actually know anybody like one-on-one, or you don't like actually have these genuine conversations, and you don't feel comfortable just going over and knocking on their door, so that's really amazing that you did that, and I think is a really cool role model for other people that are moving to small towns.
Another example is this old guy, Jerry, who like works for the county and does roads and whatnot. Like I'd be out there gardening after work or on the weekend, and it's a small town. So people drive by and you say hello to people and they come and chat with you, or like, what's this whole deal about this girl from California? And just curious. And I think just being open and being respectful got me a long ways out there.
Yeah. What were some of the things about ranching that on that scale? I mean, that's a humongous scale. What were some things about ranching at that scale that surprised you?
Everything, because I'd never ranched before.
Yeah.
I guess a little context. The operation I went to is a 5th generation cow-calf operation for the most part, and was a family operation pretty much before I joined as like a first employee. I think they maybe had a hired guy the year before or like a cowboy, basically. It didn't work out. But anyways, I was just surprised by how much was expected of me in a very good way. We weren't making excuses for me or anyone else. It was like me and my boss. And so if we had to get things done, there wasn't any way of like, oh, let's call Taylor, or oh, this or oh, that. It's like, oh, you're going to go up to the co-op and hand load 50-pound salt blocks and 100-pound mineral tubs in a stock trailer and then come back and unload them. And you better believe I'd text my boss, hey, I'm coming back, and he'd come down and help me. But, oh, how do you load a 100-pound mineral on the back of a flatbed? You figure it out. You figure it out fast. And so I think that was I didn't realize it at the time, but just that expectation. And there wasn't this like, oh, you're training, you're learning, you're a female, it's your first time, you don't have the experience. It was just like I was taken up to that level, and the bar was set from the beginning, and that became the standard that I keep myself to and my team now to, which has been really cool. I think I was surprised at how much experience I got to have out there for being a quote unquote cow calf operation. and it wasn't ever sold to me as like ranching for profit, but their operation, I think, had been in EL for many years and done ranching for profit, and they do ranch for profit. And again, it was kind of like just the standard that I learned. And I think it just set a high bar from the beginning. And like got experience, showed up, and within a month I was calving out 250 heifers. And I was like, hadn't been around a cow basically ever. And now it's like, okay, well, we're tagging these calves and we're pairing them up, and we're getting them in the pairs pasture and kicking them out in the heavies pasture. And we run our own steers. Are we sending them to the feedlot? Are we running them on grass? Are we sending cattle to corn stalks in the winter? Are we feeding them here? And then the whole like horse thing. I'd never been on a horse before. I kid you not. I've been on a horse twice in my life before. Once was on the beach, like following an instructor, basically walking along. And the second was when I got the job, I was like, oh, I better learn how to ride a horse. And my boss at the time at the farm in California, his wife rode horses. And so I remember like asking her, I was like, hey, can we go out like one time riding? And this is hilarious now, but the horse was still haltered. She was walking the horse in the orchard, and I was sitting there like death gripping the horn, being like, oh my God, I can feel the four legs walking under me. And she goes, yeah, Fiona, it's not like a car. And I'm like, okay, it's a living, breathing, walking animal. Yeah. And so even that, it was like, they're not going to have me like sorting in the alley on a horse my first day, but it was like, okay, well, we'll put you on a good ranch horse. Like, let's go. We're going to go gather. Like, oh, we're going to go check pairs. Like, okay, like learned how to saddle a horse pretty dang fast and figured it out. Yeah. So I think just, I was surprised at how many aspects of the industry, well, I didn't know anything about the industry, but how many parts of it there were, which kept it like so exciting, and I kept learning. And again, that was a huge driver for why I stayed. I was able to take on responsibility, and I learned a ton out there.
Wow. And it sounds like too, you didn't let any narratives about like, I don't belong here, I'm not cut out for this. Can you just describe your general mindset around being bad at something for a while, like, and having to make mistakes and shake it off?
Gosh, I think my attitude to most things, but ranching in particular, is like, I'm not taking no for an answer. And we all have to start somewhere. And I think being welcome to help and feedback and learning is huge. And like listening with respect. The amount of old cowboys that have given me wisdom or tidbits or knowledge or feedback there, a lot of it's great. Some of it, I'm like, I don't know, maybe. But like having kind of the respect to be able to listen and hear that, whether you agree or disagree, like I think it has taken me a long ways. And I think being excited about it, I think people in the industry tend to be older males, and coming at it from a place of like, I'm excited to be here, I'm excited to learn, and I'm willing to do the work is huge. I think like when I got out to Kit Carson, there was like this stigma of like, oh, you're from California, you're so this and that. And I'm like, hey, like, well, first of all, that's not the part of California I was from.
Yeah.
It's not all what you think you see in the news and whatnot. But second of all, I was like, get to know me and then make an opinion about me. And I'm a hard worker, and I'm going to pride myself on that. And so I think that just shows. Like, oh, my first branding, I remember I was at Tony Hamer's place, a neighbor, and it was like an absolute disaster, like fighting every calf to try to like hold them down. And then it was like, come to the next year and they've got me like flanking 200 calves. I'm like, okay, well, yep, just because I'm smaller and a female doesn't mean I can't do this job or I can do this job. It's like more than anything, it's about like timing with your partner and technique with that rope and tail and whatnot. But anyways, I think that's what I'm about. Like, you better work hard. And I think if you can work hard, people are willing and like want to, like, people love to help and like give advice and give wisdom and have you ask them about things. And I think if you can ask and be willing to listen with like an open heart and be genuine, not that you have to take everything at face value, I think it serves people, or it served me a long ways.
Mm-hmm. I love that. What were some things that were harder than you thought they were going to be? Or maybe some things that really, hit you hard?
One of the first things I remember doing that first year, probably my first month, is it's been bone dry drought. And we went out and dug holes for railroad ties with post hole diggers. And
Oh my
god damn,
God.
that humbled me fast. And then I'm like looking at this entire set of corrals there at headquarters, like, holy
Oh,
shit, somebody dug all of these by hand
oh.
30, 40, 50, whatever, 80 years
Mm,
ago. I'm like, mad
mhm.
respect. Or all these cedar posts out there for miles and miles. I'm like, whew, I thought I was tough. Whew,
Yep.
that was a reality check. And after that, when we borrowed our neighbor's hydraulic auger for the skid steer, I never
Yep.
took that for granted again.
Yeah, exactly. Or do it all on a wet year or something. Try to time it a little
Right?
better.
That was probably like a physical thing that kicked my ass. But
Yep.
something that was harder than I thought. I struggle with this question, and maybe it's why my current boss, Christy, and I get along so well, because we are so open-minded and like that isn't impossible. It's funny, Executive Link, which is a partner program of Ranching for Profit, they always like, what's your paradigm question, like what's seemingly impossible today that would be a fundamental difference in your business if you could do it. And we struggle with that because of how nimble we are, which is totally an asset. But thinking about like hard things, ranching's hard. You got to be able to put the work in. And I think if it wasn't hard, everyone would be doing it. For me, doing physical labor and like meaningful work, as in like we're grazing these systems to like improve these grasslands and to keep condition on our livestock or to maintain it or to put gain on stalkers and having respect there, like I sleep well at night and I know the work that we're doing isn't easy. And like, yeah, I don't know if I get really caught up on things that are
Hmm.
harder than I thought, because I think it happens all the time.
Yeah, totally. I think that speaks a lot to your mindset. So you mentioned Christy. You two met at a Women in Ranching. We'll link to all of these resources in the show notes because you've mentioned Ranching for Profit and Executive Link. Women in Ranching is an amazing organization. You had gone to a circle, which is one of their events in 2022, and met Christy, but you hadn't realized maybe you had met her before. At some point, she was on Flying Diamond, but then anyway, like soon thereafter, she shared a range management position with you to send around. She was like, here, send this off to your friends. Yeah, tell
Yeah.
us about that time and what led you to being like, I'm applying for that job. I want that job.
That was out in Western Colorado, I think at the High Lonesome Ranch, which was phenomenal. And yeah, Christy had gotten our contact info from just being participants in this Women in Ranching event and had shared that she had worked at the Santa Lucia Conservancy in California for 10 plus years and had a place in Colorado, but had leased it out to a neighbor for like maybe 15 years or so, and was ultimately trying to get back to her place to be doing the work that they were doing in California, like using cattle as a tool for land improvement. She wanted to implement that tool as in kind of like regenerative grazing on her own place in Colorado, because her leasee was not taking it in that direction. I'd say he was probably taking it more in a set stock traditional direction. And anyways, I remember her forwarding me this posting about the job position. I actually sent it to a couple of my friends. I was like, oh, I met this badass woman at this conference. Like, if you guys are looking for a job, you guys should apply. And again, that was maybe at the beginning or mid-October in 2022. And then in November, my grandpa passed away, and so I went back to England with my family for the funeral and for maybe 9 days or so to spend some time just with our family and whatnot. And It was my sister Olivia and my dad were there, and we had some really, I think, just like sobering conversations about a relationship I was in and how it wasn't the best relationship, and I wasn't with someone that respected me for who I am, and ultimately wasn't someone that I would see myself long term with. And I think having that reality check of having someone else tell you that was huge, and like being out of the everyday of like, we live together, we're in the community together, but like we're on another continent right now and I'm like very removed from the situation.
Mm.
I was able to kind of like take the blinders out and realize like that wasn't the healthiest relationship that I wanted to be in. And they were really strong and encouraging me that I needed to leave that relationship. And I ended up doing that. And with that kind of came with like, probably it's best that I physically leave Eastern Colorado to create some physical space there. I was kind of like balancing that and in my job, because it was a fifth generation operation and my bosses were maybe 5 or 6 or 7, I can't really remember, years older than me. Realistically, there wasn't a ton of space for me to like come up past like this ranch manager position.
Mm.
And in my mind, that's kind of like making some of those more big picture operational decisions. Like when I was a ranch manager there, I'm like, kind of felt like more like a grass manager or
Mm.
grazing manager. Like I'm doing all the grazing planning, the moving. Okay, we're branding on X date. I got to make sure all the animals are in. I got to line up who's going to come and help us. I can make the schedule of like, okay, Taylor's going to flank and Bob's going to rope and Gary's going to cut nuts or whatever it is. Like I did all that stuff and shipping and whatnot, but I think ultimately feeling like I wanted to take part more in like the numbers and the
Sure.
operational decision making. And so I learned a ton out there. And for me, it was really important to stay and do the time out there to have ranch manager behind my name. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I then going to look for new positions, I could then come in at that ranch manager level versus starting at the very bottom again. And so that was really important to me. And I had been a ranch manager then. And so I think just ultimately those two things were the big push that I needed or had at the time that led me to letting my boss know that I wouldn't be working for them in 2023 and that ultimately I'd be looking for a new job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like that's a lot. I mean, that's like a huge,
Yeah. And so,
put all your stuff in your car and just like, yeah, change it all up
yeah, legit
again.
packed my stuff in a blizzard in a storage unit and I had my friend help me and I'm just like, there's no amount of money that I could like pay you. This is like
Oh, yeah.
horrible. But yeah, ultimately, I let them know that at the end of November, and I respectfully said, I don't have a job lined up, but could I use you as a professional reference? And I got a damn good professional reference that ultimately went to Christy and came out in December for an in-person interview. And then like the cherry on the top for me was like she had said at the time, she's like, yeah, like if I hire you and this works out, like I'm going to this workshop in the beginning of January, I'd love for you to come with me. And I was like, is this the ranching for profit workshop? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, oh my god, yes, like my first paid day of work is going to be going to ranching for profit. I was like
Wow.
totally sold. Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was a little over 2 years ago.
Wow. And that says a lot about how she wanted you to be involved, that she wanted to bring you to, so you knew that you were going to be making decisions and thinking
And that
about
was
things bigger. Yeah.
exactly. Like in my mind, she had communicated like I want us speaking the same language. It doesn't our operation or this operation no good if I go learn all these great things and then you aren't speaking the same language
Totally.
basically. And yeah, I think initially when I was quote unquote sold on the job, I had no idea what the operation was going to look like. And Chrissy didn't either because she was coming back and there was some cattle on the place, but it was kind of like a mixed herd that she had with Lisi. And it was like, that second week of work, we took all those pears to the sale barn, and it was like, okay, well, what are we going to do?
Fresh start. Yep.
Yeah, and thank God, after Ranching for Profit, we quickly joined Executive Link, and we had our first meeting in February. And so we were like, I'm still gung-ho on it 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
But we were like, gosh, the cattle market's so high. Like, what does it make sense to buy into? And I think our big takeaway from that very first meeting was like, well, why don't you guys custom graze? And we're like, huh? What's custom grazing?
Oh,
Sure
wow.
enough, I'd done custom grazing at Flying Diamond. I just hadn't called it that or really thought of it that way. But we took in custom cattle of other people's without having to have that initial investment in buying a herd when the market was high. And so it was like, okay, this custom grazing thing, like that could work out. And it was great. Like we were able to learn the land. Like Eastern Colorado is pretty flat, pretty short grass prairie everywhere, no trees, no water. And so it's pretty uniform in a lot of ways that you graze one pasture, you can graze most of the rest of the ranch similarly.
Yeah.
And Redwing, where I currently am, I think it has 13 different ecological site descriptions. I don't even know what the hell that means, but it's very diverse. So we've got like riparian area with like over a mile or two of river through the place. We've got short grass prairie. We've got irrigated hay fields. We've got sub-irrigated pastures. And then we've got like really forested timber stuff on the south side of the ranch, as well as some kind of like upland from like cross. And so it was like, okay, well, we can learn the place a little bit, like grass wise and cattle wise this first year without having to like have this huge investment. And yeah, that's kind of where we got started.
Wow, that's so cool. And can you tell me a little bit more about Red Wing's mission and then where it is? Yeah, what are the main goals of the ranch, just so that we have some context?
Our mission: grazing forward, regenerating land, livestock, and livelihoods. Something that I'm passionate and Christy's passionate and has really sat at the forefront of the decision making for the ranch is the premise of like the whole ranching for profit, maybe philosophy or course, whatnot. But ultimately, like if we can't have profitable enterprises or an operation, like everything else in my mind doesn't matter so much. Like what we're doing for the ground and what we're doing for the people. Like if our business can't be there next year to be managing that land in a regenerative way or to hire these people to have them on our team to support them, like, so what in my mind? And so that's been really big for us. We aren't profitable yet, but we are on our way, and that's something I'm really excited about. And I feel like if there's any 2 cents in me talking to my neighbor about doing things in a regenerative capacity or them asking about what we're doing on our place and encouraging them to try things or be open to things, like it's got to make money at the end of the day, or else it's kind of like the so what in my mind of like, oh wait, are you doing that because you have a deep pocket? Are you doing that because this is grandpa's ranch and all the land and all the livestock were there for you? And so that's been something that's sat at the forefront of our decision making. And I think the custom grazing again was like another great opportunity to like showcase that of like, yeah, okay, maybe you don't have $1 million to buy livestock. Like that's okay. You can still ranch. You can be a rancher. You can custom graze Taylor's cattle, and you could even potentially do that on leased land where you don't need $1 million to buy land. As long as you can pay that lease rate with your custom grazing rate and pay yourself, there's a lot of opportunity in that style of business that has very low direct costs. That's like a great entry point for any rancher.
That's awesome. And it sounds like you're coming in at the operation itself is really young. And so they're learning, like Christy is learning, you're learning, like you're both kind of like building the plane, flying the plane while you're building it, whatever it's, like you both have not had a history of grazing there for that many years. So you're trying to be a profitable business, but you're also just trying to figure out how to grow cows on that land, like, and take care of that grass because that's all new. And so that's a cool opportunity for you to just like be right there at the very front row. You're doing it. You're figuring it out.
Yeah, I'd say it's has been very much uncharted territory in kind of that operational sense. Like the
Yeah,
day-to-day stuff we've definitely got dialed in and whatnot, and that's why I was
sure.
hired. But what we're doing with our business has probably been the most exciting and like the most attractive thing to Christie's job positioning 2.5 years ago or whatnot when I read it was like this opportunity to really like start a business from zero. And that doesn't mean there's been like us paying a lot of tuition as in learning things the hard way, but it's been super dynamic, and Christy definitely comes like with an ecological lens and background. And I think given that my experience in Eastern Colorado was like production, profitable, just make it happen, cow calf kind of operation, and a lot of grazing and a lot of experience, like subconsciously, I think the profitability was driven into me there. And
Mm,
I think we've balanced each other really well in this, like, this, I don't know, maybe thought of like 9.5 out of 10 times profitability and ecology are going to like walk the same line and like be hand in hand. And the decision that's most profitable most of the time is the decision that's like the most ecologically sound. And so it's been really cool to like walk this fine line of just, yeah, having a business that cares about both these things. And like, I really know what that actually looks like now on the
yeah,
back end.
totally. Oh, that's awesome. I guess like interpersonally too, like you're working with Christy pretty closely. What have you learned about just being sort of in lockstep with a ranch owner? Even just, I'm just curious about like, how do you make your relationship healthy? Like, how do you keep it so that you can disagree and move on? How do you keep it so that, people feel like they're respected, but challenged in a positive way? It's a hard thing to have a relationship when you're like that close to the person that you're working with. Like, tell me a little bit about the things that you've learned working with Christy.
I think trust is huge, but setting really clear expectations from the beginning has been super helpful. And yeah, the biggest thing has been people management skills. Like,
Yeah.
how do you manage your coworkers, your employees, but how do you manage up? Like, how can
Mm,
I tell my boss, like, just because you're the boss, that doesn't just give you this like free pass. Here's the expectation that the ranch has set and we have all agreed on, and I'm going to hold you to that expectation.
mm,
Like everyone else on our team, like myself, like Gabe, our NAP apprentice, and you as the boss. And I think that has been really effective. And
mm.
I think for me, making it about the job and not making it personal is
Yeah.
super important for like the success. And I think our team has really good communication. We these are ranching for profit terms, but we have Whitby, so these like working in the business meetings every week. And so that's like a team meeting that our entire team is a part of. And that's kind of checking in on the nuts and bolts, the day to day, the grazing plan, the ed events, the highlight of the week, things like that, what we have coming down the pipeline. And then we also have these WAPB meetings, these like working on our business meetings, like big picture meetings, like, okay, let's like look at the budget for 2025, or let's do the grazing plan for the pairs, or let's do a cost analysis of like, is this infrastructure project going to pay, things like that. And so I think we've carved out the time where we can talk about these hard things at work
Yeah.
early and
Yep.
often. And then it was new to me before working here with Christy, but we have like quarterly performance check-ins. And again, it's like looking at the performance for a specific job. And so I think things don't really, or it's a lot harder for things to kind of go unsaid and then like get under people's skin and then like become a big problem
Yeah.
when we're having like weekly check-ins. I'm huge on windshield time of like, yeah, maybe we don't need two people to go check cows, but if that's an opportunity for you and I to like get on the same page about something, like let's do that. And then yeah, we have those big quarterly performance check-ins that I swear come way too often and I'm way too sweaty for them. But they're good. They're good for
They are.
everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And it's like a chance for her to ask you, like, what do you need? It doesn't need to necessarily be like the traditional, like, here's my judgment of you of your last quarter. It's like, it's just a conversation, like exactly like you said. So it doesn't fester and go unsaid
Yeah.
and then become like this monster in your mind about like, ooh, she thinks this and she's doing this because of this. And it's kind of nice to get clear and just, nip these things when they come up. That's really amazing that she has that many structures. I'm sure takes that from a lot of different of her professional experience to ranching. That's cool.
Yeah. And I also was going to say we both have like very direct and clear kind of blunt communication styles, and it works for the two of us very well. There's no like bullshitting and like I'm going to skirt around it or tell everyone but Christy. It's like I think because we can be so direct and be so clear, we're like on the same page, which is great. And I think we both are like, feel like we've made the space where we can ask questions and like challenge in a healthy way, not like,
Sure.
oh, is it Christy's view or Fiona's? It's like, okay, are we making the most profitable decision, or are there parts of this scenario we haven't considered, or like what could have been better, or tell me why, like sell me on that idea.
Ooh,
In
that's
like
good.
a very healthy way that I think ultimately like makes us have a better business and have like a better, more supportive team.
It sounds to me too like it's what I would want more ranch teams to have is that intention. Like it just feels like most ranch and farm teams sort of just think that it just happens. Like you work together and then just like it's either a good fit or a bad fit. Like, oh, this is not going to work out, or it's just like this perfect, mesh of a team. And it sounds like, I don't know, there's just a lot more intention into creating structures to make these things happen. In my opinion, I feel the same way as you. Like I didn't even know this was even a whole field of thought. Like team management
Right?
there's like theories and frameworks and like tools I feel like there's so much out there in like the professional world, like the even corporate world,
Like
or like
corporate,
yeah,
yes.
that's like actually kind of helpful here. And it sounds like Ranching for Profit's done that, like the structures, the check-ins, the performance reviews, like that stuff kind of sounds a little bit like blech. But when you really do it, it's like, wow, this really helps a lot. And we need to make it intentional or else it doesn't happen and things fester.
Totally. Yeah. I'd say like I've personally, it's been like we do ranch wide goals each year and then like personal
Oh,
ranch goals.
yeah.
And the last 2 years is in this year in 2025, I guess, and last year in 2024. I've had people management on my personal kind of goals.
Sure.
And like I went down to Kingsville, Texas and did a people management course down there.
Oh, no
And
way.
EL did like a continued ed and we read the book Crucial Conversations, and I now call everything a damn crucial conversation where I'm like, I'm gonna start with the facts and all these things. And it's definitely something I've had to work at, and I've never had any like formal training in it other than what I've done here working with Christy these last couple of years. And so yeah, it's maybe not the most fun kind of
Yeah.
thing, but I think it is so worthwhile and like pays you and your team and your business back dividends.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's like at the end of the day, if ranching is not like fun or profitable, like I think the fun part of it should be like you should enjoy going to work, and the people you work with should not have these big, like I've been on operations where the vibe is bad. Like people aren't communicating and people are sort of just uncomfortable with each other and not saying the thing out loud. And I think it really affects your day to day. And ultimately, like, what are we even doing this for if it's not to like enjoy ourselves and feel like we're doing this amazing thing for the planet, for each other. And, so I think that
Yeah.
it sounds mundane, but when you really look at it, it's the most important thing, really.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. I'm going to put a bunch of resources in these show notes, but you've mentioned Executive Link, we've mentioned Women in Ranching, and you guys use another company called Ranch Right, correct?
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
going to hype them up for a second. They are a bookkeeping service for like ranchers and farmers. I think mostly, potentially they do other clients, but they have been phenomenal at helping get our books straight. We were using a accountant and bookkeeper, but specifically a bookkeeper that was really doing like tax accounting.
Sure.
And Ranch Right is big on managerial accounting. And so they're setting up your books in a way that can help drive decision making. And it has been an absolute game changer for Christy and I, and like actually knowing our numbers and like what are our overheads and what are the direct costs and can we break those out by enterprise, all of that. And so that's a plug. They are awesome and could not recommend them more highly.
Great. Yeah, we'll put a link to their podcast too, because that's just really, that's really cool if you want to sort of think at that next level. All right, well, we've reached the segment of the podcast that's called a rapid fire. Don't think too much about these questions and the answers, just whatever comes to your mind and make your answer short and sweet. Finish this sentence. Being a beginning agrarian means...
Being a beginning agrarian means being excited about the future for ranching and ag, being committed to doing the work, and not taking no for an answer.
Love it. If you had a private chef cook you any dish after a long day, what would it be?
A bone-in ribeye, cooked medium rare with a lot of butter, grilled veggies, and a salad, and probably a really, really cold beer.
Nice. What's one book on your bookshelf?
1Q84 by Haruki Murakami.
What's one musical artist I should listen to?
Nicholas Jamerson.
Country? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'll have to give it a try. What's a non-ag related hobby or interest of yours?
I really enjoy kayaking, rafting, and I love cooking.
Nice. A nugget of advice for other beginning agrarians is...
The amount of people that will be willing to help you will be absolutely astounding if you put yourself out there with a good work ethic, a curiosity learned, and lots of respect. And it's like to no benefit of theirs, seemingly.
And where can people find more information about you and Redwing Ranch?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Fiona C. Jackson and on TikTok at Good Enough Welding.
Oh, no, you have a TikTok? I have to see this.
Exclusively ranch content on TikTok, and my Instagram is mostly like my dogs and graze lines that 99% of people will be like, what's that? And then the ranch is on like all the social media platforms at Redwing Ranch.
Perfect. And we'll link the website. You guys have a newsletter now too, because you're doing educational events, and I just signed up, and I will put the link because I'm very excited about this.
Yes. And I'm going to do one plug here at the end. We are hosting a grazing workshop with women in ranching at the end of June. So definitely check that out on our website.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much, Fiona, for being on the podcast. I've been wanting to interview you for such a long time, and so thank you for making the time.
Thanks, Taylor. I'm excited.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to connect to the broader Quivira community of ranchers, farmers, conservation and government agency professionals, educators, nature nerds, curious consumers, and more, we're excited to have you. Our website is quiviracoalition.org, and in the upper right, click on Get E-News to sign up for our newsletter, where we share happenings and events, learning opportunities, job postings, and more. Also, if you're enjoying this podcast, please leave us a review and a rating. It really will help other people find us and maybe even find their next step in regenerative agriculture. Thanks so much, and see you next time.
This podcast was produced by Quivira Coalition in our quest to support resilience on working lands. Learn more about our work and how you can support regenerative agriculture and solutions to climate change at quiviracoalition.org. This episode was edited and engineered by Caleb Wenzel-Fisher. A Folk Story, our theme music, was made by Alex Cristoforetti, and we're grateful for our guests who take time out of their busy lives to share their experiences with us.